Hello, everybody. Today we are going to factor trinomials in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where the a value is greater than 1. That means that the number in front of x squared is going to be, again, something greater than 1. So in the previous problems that we've done with factoring trinomials, that value was 1, or you didn't see a value there. Today, there's going to be a number in front of x squared. Now, before we talk about how to factor these problems, with factoring, a couple of things you want to do. Anytime you're asked to factor something, the first thing you want to do is check for a GCF first. And I want to introduce this now because it's going to be useful later on. Now, in all today's problems, there will not be a GCF, but in the future, anytime you're asked to factor something, the first thing you should do is check for a GCF. Once you do that, then you want to determine what method you're using. Whether it be factoring by grouping, reverse FOIL, and many different sources explain factoring in different ways. But this process, again, I want to introduce now to make sure that you understand that not every single problem you look at and just factor right away using the proper method. A lot of times there are greatest common factors that you have to take out. Okay. Now the method we're going to use today to factor these quadratic trinomials, the a value greater than 1, is by grouping. So it actually uses something we've learned previously, which is factoring by grouping. So let's do an example of what this looks like. So for the first problem, we're going to do 5x squared plus 11x plus 2. Now, we should check for a GCF first, but there is none, and all the problems today will not have one. So if we look, the a value is bigger than 1, the number in front of x squared. So the first thing you have to do is multiply a times c. Okay? When we multiply 5 times a positive 2, we get positive 10. Okay? After we do that, we want to find factors of AC. AC is the product that add up to BB. I wanted to write those first two steps down. So out of our factors of 10, we have 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. And the ones that add up to be my B value 11 is 1 and 10. Since my C value is positive, both these factors are positive since they have to add up to be positive 11. So what you have to do now is you have to replace the middle term with the two factors that worked, putting x and x for each one. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to write 5x squared plus 10x plus 1x plus 2. Now let me recap what I just did. After I multiplied a times c, we found the factors that add up to be b, which is 1 and 10. So I replaced those two factors with the middle term, or the b term, putting an x and x with each one. By doing this, I'm not mathematically changing the value of it, because if I add 10x plus 1x, I get 11x. Okay? That part's going to be a part that's a little confusing to get. But once you do that part correctly, now we're doing factoring by grouping just like we did before. So if I look at my first parenthesis, the GCF is 5x. If we divide these by 5x to help us determine what goes inside parentheses, I get x plus 2. For my second parenthesis, there is no greatest common factor besides 1. So remember, factoring by grouping, you do have to write that. So I get exactly the same thing back, 1x or just x. So if I look, these two parentheses are exactly the same, meaning I did it correctly. So my final answer, if I factor out that x plus 2, is 5x plus 1 times the quantity x plus 2. So once you get this first part down, it's just like what we did before. Okay, here's our second problem. 3x squared plus 4x minus 15. If I look at my problem, there is no greatest common factor. I want us to start looking for that, but again, all the problems today will not have a greatest common factor in them. So there is no greatest common factor, and the number in front of x squared is bigger than 1. So in order to factor this, I have to use factoring by grouping. So the first thing we're going to do is multiply a times c, which gives me negative 45. The sign is very important to that answer. So now I'm looking for factors of negative 45 to add to be my b value of positive 4. So if I do my factors of 45, we have 1 and 45, 3 and 15, and 5 and 9. Okay. Out of these factors, I want them to add up to be positive 4. So if I put the negative with 5, because one of them has to be negative, that will work. Now again, when I find the factors that add up to be the middle term, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an x and x for each one of those factors and replace it with the middle term. So I just bring down the first and the last term. So I bring down the 3x squared, bring down the negative 15. I'm going to replace 4x with the two factors that work. Doesn't matter what order I put them in. I think for our class, just to make sure that everybody can follow along, let's put the biggest number first. So I'm going to do positive 9x and minus 5x. So I replaced 4x with these two terms. Okay, and that's the step that might be a little bit confusing. That's a little bit new that you have to get down. Once I replace the middle term with the two factors that worked, putting an x and x for each one, and mathematically remember, this is exactly the same as that, it's just a little bit bigger. Now I can use my factoring by grouping. Okay, so if I do factoring by grouping here, I'm going to take out a 3x, and we get x plus 3. For my second parenthesis, greatest common factor is negative 5. So if I divide those by negative 5, we get x plus 3. Final answer, 3x minus 5 times x plus 3. Final answer. Remember, as always, and I wish more kids would do this to check their answers sometimes to make sure they're right. But if you want to check your answer, because it only takes 30 seconds to a minute, multiply it back through and see if we get the original problem. So let's do it. This is going to be a check. So we have 3x squared plus 9x. Then we'll multiply negative 5 to both the terms, minus 5x minus 15. And if we combine like terms, we get 3x squared plus 4x minus 15. So we did check and it does work. Okay, go ahead and try this problem on your own. So after you write it down, pause the video. And then after you complete it, restart it and check to see how you did. So the next 10 seconds will be blank seconds for you to do the problem. Okay, so hopefully you got a chance to try that on your own. The first step is to check for a GCF, but there is none. So we see the a value is bigger than 1 in front of x squared. It's a quadratic trinomial. So we multiply a times c. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. So one of my factors is a positive and one's a negative. Out of my factors of 14, it looks like 1 and 14 are going to work if I put the negative with 14. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these two factors and replace them with the middle term. So I'm going to rewrite 2x squared, going to rewrite the negative 7, and I'm going to replace, again, negative 13x, the two terms that work. I'm going to put the biggest number first, excluding sign. It actually doesn't matter which term you put first, but I encourage you to put the bigger number first, excluding sign, just simply for the reason so we're all doing the problems the same and it's easier for us to check it. Again, it wouldn't matter mathematically if I put the 1x here and the negative 14x there, I would still get the same answer. So now we do factoring by grouping. For the first parenthesis, they share a 2x. So if I divide those by 2x, we're left with x minus 7. For the second parenthesis, they do not share anything in common, so my GCF is a positive 1. And now I have my final answer, one step away, 2x plus 1, x minus 7. Remember, you could always check your answer by multiplying it through and make sure you get the original problem back. Okay? So again, this first part, these first two steps are critical to your understanding of this, because once you get to this part, now it's factoring by grouping, which is what we just did previously. Okay, so what I wanted to do is give you two more problems that you could try on your own. We're not going to go over these problems on the video, but I just wanted to provide you with two additional problems that you could do to practice. Okay, so feel free. I would highly encourage you to do these problems. Not a requirement, but I highly encourage you to do these problems. And if you have a question, please bring your two problems in and ask me, and I'll be glad to check them over for you in class. And to finish, we got to finish with a funny picture. So here's a squirrel, and he's crazy about math, as you can see. So everybody loves math. We had the zebras who loving math, and now we have the squirrel loving math as well. So hopefully you have a great day. Thank you for watching, and please come in with any questions. Thank you very much.